The period of ancient Greece is often characterized for its array of features that shaped its history, culture, and legacy. This includes aspects such as their experiment with democracy, the birth of Western philosophy, the creation of drama, the practice of a polytheistic religion and Greek mythology, their growing military prowess, and their remarkable advancements in art and architecture. However, despite these advancements in various domains, ancient Greece, like most other civilizations during the same time period, had a societal expectation for women to be submissive to their male counterparts. Women were not considered free citizens, only born men in the polis were. Women were seen as inferior beings who had no social, political, or economic importance, regardless of social class. Women could not vote or hold public office, and they had limited legal rights when it came to matters of inheritance and property. Additionally, while formal education was primarily accessible to male citizens, only the wealthiest of females received a formal education. Moreover, women were expected to remain within the private sphere of their household, with their main role residing in fulfilling the domestic obligations. Women were expected to bear children, prepare meals for their family, and overall take care of the household. This subordination of women is even explicitly noted in the works of philosophers such as Aristotle and Xenophon. Aristotle notes in his book Politics that women are expected to demonstrate obedience and subordination, while men are characterized by the courage of command. Moreover, Xenophon illustrates the domestic expectation of women in his work Oeconomicus, as he states, "I think the God from the very beginning designed the nature of women for the indoor work and concerns, and the nature of man for the outdoor work. For he prepared man's body and mind to be more capable of enduring cold and heat and traveling and military campaigns, and so he assigned the outdoor work to him. Because the woman was physically less capable of endurance, I think the God has evidently assigned the indoor work to her." The philosophy and expectation that the role of women was to solely support their husband and manage the household made it so women could not act independently. They feared voicing their opinions against men and contradicting societal norms, for this might bring repercussions such as physical abuse or angering the gods. However, while various philosophers and playwrights aligned themselves with these beliefs, notable playwrights during this time illustrated women as powerful figures who defied the odds. This can especially be seen through the works of Greek tragedian Sophocles. Most notably, Sophocles' play Antigone uses the role of Antigone and Ismene to convey the subordinate status of women in ancient Greece, as well as illustrate one of the earliest displays of feminism. The play Antigone takes place in the city of Thebes, where the two sons of Oedipus, Eteocles and Polynices, have just died in battle, making their uncle Creon the new king. As punishment for Polynices' rebellion against his brother, King Creon denies Polynices a proper burial and deems anyone who attempts to bury Polynices will be punished with death. Despite this enforced punishment, Polynices' sister Antigone deems the law unjust and seeks to bury her brother. Antigone seeks the help of her sister Ismene, but Ismene ultimately refuses to help in fear of Creon's punishment. Antigone eventually decides to properly bury her brother on her own, not fearing the consequences. However, Creon discovers that Antigone has defied his decree, and he sends her to be sealed in a tomb to die. Despite protests from his son Haman, who happens to be engaged to Antigone, Creon refuses to change his law. Only after the blind prophet Tiresias warns Creon that his actions will result in the death of his son, that he decides to spare Antigone's life. However, his change in perspective was too late. By the time he granted Antigone freedom, she had already hung herself. Haman finds Antigone in this state and kills himself not long after. Afterwards, distraught at the death of her son, Creon's wife Eurydice then kills herself, leaving Creon utterly alone and in despair. Antigone's defiance of male authority and the pursuit of her personal convictions illustrate feminist ideals of women as dominant, powerful beings with the ability to evoke positive change. During the time frame of ancient Greece, women feared rebelling against men. Deviating from social expectations and laws resulted in a variety of consequences depending on your specific city-state, social status, and crime. These crimes include questioning male authority, adultery, or not fulfilling domestic obligations. Women had limited legal protection, so if women engaged in unconventional behavior, they would be punished with fines, social stigma, and ostracism, and even physical punishment. Despite being aware of these possible consequences, Antigone dismantles those social norms when she speaks against the patriarchal order. In contrast, Antigone's sister, Ismene, conveys the traditional subordination of women. Even though Ismene sympathizes with Antigone and wishes peace for her brother's body, she fears the potential consequences from Creon. When trying to convince Antigone of her burial plan, Ismene states, "We are only women. We cannot fight with men, Antigone." Ismene's recognition that her femininity makes her inferior to men highlights the restricting lives of women in ancient Greece. However, not only does Antigone defy Creon by burying Polynices, but she never wavers in her public assertion of autonomy and is willing to die for it. Even when she was questioned by Creon, she never asked for forgiveness or mercy. Not only does Antigone openly admit to her defiance, but she even chooses to bury Polynices in broad daylight. This blatant act of rebellion, without even attempting to be discreet, emphasizes how Antigone wanted her actions to be visible and public. Antigone believed that burying her brother is what the gods would have wanted, since it was a ritual for a person to be buried, so the soul can have a peaceful journey to the afterlife. Since Antigone deems her actions honorable, she conducts this act with the intention to send Creon and the public a message. Antigone rejects the passive role of women and openly speaks her mind. She died exerting her autonomy, even if that meant she did not fulfill traditional roles such as becoming a mother or a wife. Through the tragic fate of Creon, the play illustrates the possible repercussions if men let their misogyny cloud their judgment. Not only does Creon believe that his laws are above the gods, but it is also clear that his disrespect towards Antigone is rooted in his disdain that it is a woman who is posing a threat to his power. When Creon argues with Haman about his allegiance to Antigone, Creon explicitly comments on Antigone's gender. As Creon states, "And no woman shall seduce us. If we must lose, let's lose to a man, at least. Is a woman stronger than we?" Sophocles highlights that Antigone's defiance is threatening Creon's masculine order. Creon despises that a woman was rebelling against his authority, and his pride causes him to ignore the pleas from others. Even when Haman tells his father that civilians actually sympathize with Antigone and honor her bravery, he refuses to lose a battle against a woman. His arrogance and prejudice ultimately lead to his downfall. When Antigone hangs herself, the chorus mourns her tragic fate, and the public sentiment turns against Creon. Not only do the Theban citizens begin to question Creon's authority, but he also loses the respect and love of Haman and Eurydice through their acts of suicide. Perhaps if Creon had not let his pride and drive for power mask rationale, his tragedy would not have unfolded the way it did. Antigone's strong-willed persona contrasts traditional gender norms of ancient Greece. Antigone is not just simply acting in defiance of Creon, but she's combating everything he represents, a patriarchal order where women are seen as passive subordinates. Not only does Sophocles explicitly highlight gender differences in the dialogue to expose the victimization of women during this time, but he uses the tragic downfall of Creon to serve as a cautionary tale about the dangers of rigid gender norms and the disregard for the voices of women. While Antigone is not necessarily fighting for equal treatment of women in the play, she acts as an early stepping stone for feminist ideology through her willingness to speak against public order and male authority. She spearheads the belief that women do not have to fulfill the domestic obligations of mother and wife, but instead they can speak out in politics and fight against unjust laws. She stands as a beacon of autonomy and assertiveness, a powerful symbol for women that transcended its time and cultural context. Antigone showed that, regardless of gender, individuals can combat oppressive systems. The play Antigone has served a greater purpose than entertaining audiences for centuries. Not only is the play one of the earliest depictions of how theater can mirror traditional norms, but it also conveys how theater can be used as a catalyst for positive social change.